Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm going to get started in a moment here. So I just wanted to say, first of all, welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Dr. Chad Andrews, and I'm the Manager of Research and Education at the Foundation Fighting Blindness. I'm very happy to see both new and familiar faces here, and I think that really speaks to Vision Quest as both an established and a growing community. So thank you so much for being a part of this. For some of you, this will be your first Vision Quest and perhaps even your first interaction with the Foundation Fighting Blindness, which is the organization that runs the series. And we do that, certainly. Vision Quest is our premier educational series for those who are directly affected by vision loss. But it's also an educational initiative that is for individuals who are indirectly affected by vision loss. So for friends and family and loved ones generally, and also for researchers, clinicians, healthcare practitioners, and industry experts. Now, we as an organization are uniquely positioned to bring these groups together. The Foundation Fighting Blindness is Canada's largest health charity devoted to raising funds for vision research. And our goal is to drive the to accelerate the development of new treatments and cures for vision loss. I'm very proud to say that the Foundation Fighting Blindness to date has raised over $33 million for vision research in universities and hospitals across Canada. Thank you. Now, we also help lay the foundations in Canada for gene therapy, which has materialized most recently in the United States in the form of Luxturna, which is a legitimate cure for a rare form of retinitis pigmentosa. Our researchers have contributed enormously to stem cell science in Canada. In fact, we've funded Dr. Derek van der Kooi, who's at the University of Toronto, and some of you may know that Dr. van der Kooi discovered stem cells in the human eye. Now, this is so incredibly important because researchers and practitioners today are finding ways to utilize those stem cells that exist in the human eye by turning them into the cell types that are lost in so many eye diseases, including retinitis pigmentosa, age-related macular degeneration, and more. We've also supported research that led to the Argus device, also known as the bionic eye, which bypasses lost or damaged photoreceptors and allows those who are blind to see. And we continue to be involved in the advocacy efforts that will bring that device to Ontario and across Canada. These are incredible advancements, surely, and one of the central insights of Vision Quest is that they too often exist in isolation from the broader vision loss community. So that's one thing that we're here for today, absolutely, is to bring you up to date on new and exciting advancements in the area of vision science. We're also here to provide you with real insights into how to better manage and more effectively manage your own vision loss. Now, it goes without saying that all of this would be impossible without the sponsors that make Vision Quest possible. And I want to thank and recognize our national visionary sponsors, Bayer Healthcare, Novartis, Allergan, and AGTC, who are key partners in the fight against blindness. I want to thank our national event sponsor, Mera GTX, and our national breakfast sponsor, Shire, and our local sponsors, Spark Therapeutics and Glaukos. I'd also like to thank Accessible Media Incorporated, also known as AMI, for being our accessibility partner and for being a part of Vision Quest year after year after year. We thank you so much, and we couldn't do this without you. Now, I'd also like to thank staff at the Foundation Fighting Blindness who tirelessly work to put these events on and contribute their time and their expertise to make it happen. And I'd also like to thank our volunteers who are so essential to these events, and they are dedicating their time to assist staff and to also assist you and to make sure that things go smoothly. Now, they are uniquely identifiable. You've probably noticed already they're wearing very brightly colored green shirts. So if at any point you need assistance with anything, then you can locate an individual in a green shirt, or you can just raise your hand if you have difficulty seeing the green shirt, and someone will find you and come and provide you with assistance. Now, lastly, I'd like to thank all of you for being here. Vision research is only significant to the degree that it helps individuals who are living with vision loss. So your voices are uniquely elevated in this room. Thank you so much for being a part of this community and for guiding this work. So I've spoken for long enough. I think that we should go ahead and get on with the show. So I'd like to go ahead and introduce Dr. Rada Kohli, who is a retina specialist at Sunnybrook Health Services Center and an assistant professor in the Department of Ophthalmology and Visual Sciences at the University of Toronto. Dr. Kohli specializes in the diagnosis and treatment of diseases affecting the vitreous and the retina, and has a special interest in the diagnosis and management of inherited retinal diseases. Her talk today is titled Age-Related Vision Loss, Emerging Therapies, and How to Take Care of Your Eyes. So I'll invite you up to the podium, Dr. Kohli.
I don't see the, I can manage with this, Chad, it's fine. Yeah, I just can't really see the, okay, there, it's right in front of me. Hello, everyone, and it's my pleasure to come and talk to you about age-related macular degeneration. I'm not really going to talk about emerging therapies, but I am going to hope to educate you a little bit about age-related macular degeneration, the disease itself and its pathophysiology a little bit. But I hope mostly to educate you guys on how to screen yourselves and how to make sure that everybody you know knows how to screen their vision, because this is perhaps the most important thing for age-related macular degeneration. It's early detection, and if it's the wet kind, it's early treatment. So just a couple of weeks ago, I was thinking about this patient when I was developing this talk. I had a patient who came in a few months ago who had lost vision to age-related macular degeneration in one eye. And I had followed her for a long time, screening her other eye, and she was very well educated. And she came in, she called the office and said she had suddenly realized she'd lost vision in her good eye. And we brought her in that day, and sure enough, we found that she had converted from dry to wet age-related macular degeneration. This was an 80-plus female, high-functioning, driving, very involved with her grandchildren, driving them to their activities, and just a very independent, high-functioning woman who was devastated when she came in because she thought, oh, this is it. I'm not going to be able to help with the grandchildren. I'm not going to be able to help my kids. I'm not going to be able to drive. I've lost my independence. Where am I going to live? All these issues came to the forefront. But because she detected her age-related macular degeneration quite early, we were able to treat her. And a couple of weeks ago when I saw her in follow-up, her vision was actually had improved with her first injection of Lucentis, and she was able to now still meet driving criteria for vision. So, of course, we have to monitor that because the process, despite treatment, the underlying dry component can still progress. But the key thing for her was that she came in right away. She knew that something had changed, and she was in the office receiving treatment within a day. So we will talk about screening and what you all should do, regardless of age, in checking your vision shortly. So, I always tell my patients, and I tell myself this too, we're all on the same train. We're all aging, and there's no treatment for aging, unfortunately. It's happening. It's always happening, and it's a process that results in many changes throughout our life. And one of the changes in the eye is that we get buildup. So the age-related macular degeneration is a disease that is related to age, but there are also normal aging processes that take place in the eye that we often can't detect clinically, but they are taking place. There's loss of the photoreceptors, the receptors that detect light through the aging process, but we don't pick this up clinically. What we do pick up is the disease process, age-related macular degeneration. And it is the leading cause of blindness in the developed or resource-rich parts of the world. It is common in Caucasian populations. It's a bilateral process, and this is why it's so devastating, because it doesn't just affect one eye, it affects both eyes. It may be asymmetric, and it often is asymmetric, but it is a bilateral disease that affects one eye and subsequently usually affects the other eye as well. And usually under the age of 45, we don't see any signs or hear about any symptoms of age-related macular degeneration. So this is a picture on your right of the retina, and what you can see is the optic nerve, which is the cable that sends signals from the retina and the photoreceptors through the lateral geniculate nucleus, which is a part of the brain, and further on into the visual cortex and higher areas in the brain, in the visual cortex. And that's the optic nerve. You can see we have retinal veins, we have arteries and veins, or we have vessels, arteries and veins. And then in the center, that darkish spot is between the two large vessels is your macula, and the dark part is your fovea. And that is responsible, that little area is responsible for our detailed vision or fine vision. And unfortunately, that's the area that age-related macular degeneration targets. So on the left side, you can see the anatomy, and it's that center where if we lose vision in that, where it's labeled A, that's when we can't see centrally. So people with age-related macular degeneration, provided that they don't have any other comorbidities in their eyes, often have very good peripheral vision. But for reading and for all the things we all love to do, seeing faces, watching television or movies, reading, those kinds of activities, unfortunately, age-related macular degeneration targets the center, which is responsible for vision for those activities. So what are the symptoms that you need to recognize or be educated about for knowing something's wrong? Most patients complain when with age-related macular degeneration that they either have blurry vision or distorted vision or a loss of vision centrally. So in ophthalmology in general, we don't have that many symptoms that describe vision loss, distortion, blurry vision, some for the back of the eye, for the retina, the front of the eye. There's a whole other list of symptoms, but it's not like other organs and in the body. Usually it's sort of, I can't see as well as I used to, or things are a bit blurry. So we don't have too many symptoms that we look for, nor do patients come in with too many symptoms other than those. So you can see here there's a picture on your left, which looks relatively normal, two little children, and on the right, the face and the distinct features of the face are blurred out, and that's what happens in age-related macular degeneration. Now, people always ask, most people know about the two types of age-related macular degeneration. There's the dry kind and there's the wet kind, and everyone always wants to know which one is worse. Generally speaking, the dry kind, if it's in the early stages and it stays like that, is a better one to have. We don't have treatment for it, but it doesn't usually cause visual symptoms. But it does progress over time as the aging process progresses and we get more buildup of waste products in the retina and underneath the retina. The wet kind is good to have in the sense that we have treatment. So if it's detected early and you're responsive to treatment, 90% of patients will either have stabilized or improved vision with treatment. But in the end stages of either one, neither one is good to have. So it's not a clear answer that dry is better than wet or wet is better than dry. It really depends on your eye and the characteristic signs that you have in your retina that will determine how you'll do. So the dry kind, you often have mild to moderate vision changes, and you can get this sort of central shadowing. And we have stages and classifications for all different types of age related with stage 1 to stage 4, early, intermediate, and moderate. I'm not going to bore you with those things. Those are the kinds of things we talk about for research and when we talk about when we communicate amongst one another as physicians and ophthalmologists. But suffice it to know that we do have characteristics or stages, and the higher the stage. Usually in ophthalmology, we rank everything between 0 and 4, and the closer you are to 4, the more advanced your stage is. The wet kind, we get blood. That's why it's called, or the constituents of blood, leakage of protein and fluid into the retina or below the retina. So that's the wet kind. And that usually is rapidly progressive and results in sudden vision loss. The dry kind is a bit more insidious. You may not have any symptoms, but as it progresses, you may slowly realize that your vision isn't what it used to, or you struggle more with reading. But the wet kind usually happens, or it's detected right away. You may not pick it up right away because you're not screening yourself, but the second you close your eye, you'll realize that, oh, I can't see. It's not something that's slow. So there are risk factors, some of which we can control, and unfortunately some of which we can't control. We can't control our genes. We can't control who our parents are, but there is some very strong evidence on the hereditary or the inheritance of age-related macular degeneration. So if you have, there's a couple of genes, if you have mutations in them and you have them, if you have both of them and you're homozygous for both of them, then your risk of getting age-related macular degeneration is quite high, on the order of 80%. But we don't screen routinely. There's controversy in the literature, but currently we kind of follow the NIH, the American Academy of Ophthalmology guidelines, and we do not do genetic screening. So there are companies around that will that you can pay for to see your risk for developing age-related macular degeneration, but most ophthalmologists and most retina specialists, at least in the city, don't advocate for that, and we don't risk stratify based on that. So that's the genetic component that we really can't do much with. Female, we also can't do too much with, but nutrition is a big factor. So a healthy diet, rich with green leafy vegetables, the darker, the greener, the better, and oily fish can definitely help. Smoking cessation is something, we think of smoking and we think of lung cancer or cardiovascular disease, but smoking is very bad for your retinas. So smoking cessation is, thankfully, fewer and fewer people are smoking, but I still do have a good number of patients who smoke, and we definitely encourage them to try to stop or at least decrease. And then cardiovascular risk factors, hypertension, high cholesterol levels, any cardiovascular disease is also known to be a risk factor. So those are also things that you can control by taking your medications and lifestyle modification. UV protection or sunlight exposure is a little bit controversial. It's not a high risk, but I do tell all my patients to either wear a hat or sunglasses on those really, really bright days, especially if they already have some disease in both eyes. Hyperopia, blue eyes, goes along with Caucasians are at higher risk, and cataracts. So those are the risk factors for age-related macular degeneration. And the ones that we can control, we ought to control, because it does make a difference. So I'm not going to go into deeply into the pathophysiology, but suffice it to say that as we age, we get our visual processing, the RPE, the retinal pigment epithelium, gets thickened, and it's not able to process the byproducts of vision, of phototransduction, of converting light into electrical signals, as well as it can when we're younger. And so we get a buildup of waste material in and below the retina. And because of that waste, that it builds up, we get new vessels that grow that can cause bleeding, and that's the wet kind. Or the buildup of the waste can then slowly cause secondary changes where we get thinning of the structures underlying the retina and eventually vision loss with photoreceptor damage as well. So drusen are the characteristic sign of dry age-related macular degeneration, and they lie beneath the retina at the RPE and Brooks membrane layer. So here is just no talk is complete without some form of a cascade, but basically there's oxidative stress that happens through aging and seeing, which causes damage and inflammation in the photoreceptor RPE Brooks whole complex. And this results in accumulation of waste products, which can either then lead to drusen in the dry pathway, which ultimately leads to atrophy of the retinal pigment epithelium and photoreceptor death, or it can go the wet way and lead to new vessels that grow as almost a compensatory mechanism to all this waste, but those new vessels are incompetent, they're leaky, and they cause vision loss by the fluid that comes out of them and their very physical presence itself. So here we can see the photoreceptors, the RPE, and then those little red spots, that's where the drusen lie at the early stages. And so drusen, we have distinctions. Mine, I'm not a PowerPoint person. I like to talk, and actually I shouldn't have had these slides because it's hard. Are you listening to me? Are you looking at the slides? But what you need to know is there's different ways that we characterize drusen by their size, so small, intermediate, or large. And really, when I showed you that initial picture of the fundus, we look at a vessel and we say, is it less than a half the size of the vessel, which is less than 64 microns? Is it between half the vessel size and the full luminal size of the vessel, 64 to 125 microns or greater? So that's the size, but then we also talk about drusen in terms of whether they're discrete or more amorphous. So are they hard or soft or confluent or calcified? So there's different ways that we can describe drusen, and we know that the softer and more confluent the drusen are, the greater the risk of progressing to either atrophy or wet age-related macular degeneration and eventually vision loss. So here are some pictures of some fine, discrete, all of us, when we talk about hard drusen, hard small drusen, they're less than 64 microns, so less than half of one of those vessels in size, and they're very discrete. You could take a pencil and outline it, and I could take a pencil and outline that drusen, and we would have the same drawing. But the more soft drusen, they're fluffier, they're kind of hard to see their boundaries, they're typically larger in size, and they're a bit more greater risk for progression. And then again on your left, these are calcified drusen. They almost look refractile. Also tells us a little bit about chronicity and how long the drusen have been there. And the confluent ones that you see on the right picture are the ones that really look very bumpy when we do what's called OCT imaging, where we can look at the layers of the retina, and we can see that the retina and the underlying structures look very, very bumpy. Eventually what happens is those drusen sort of melt away, and in that area we get atrophy and photoreceptor loss and vision loss. And then the other things that we see in dry age-related macular degeneration are pigmentation and at the end stages atrophy. So all of these things are what we look for when we see patients with dry age-related macular degeneration. And so dry counts for, thankfully, in some ways, although like I said, it's not necessarily better than the wet kind, but in the stage 1 or stage 2, it's not a condition to be alarmed to have at that point. And that constitutes about 90% of age-related macular degeneration. The 10% is the wet kind. Let's skip that. This is just some more pictures of atrophy and RPE hyperpigmentation. And so the education, and I think this is the piece of why you guys are here and the importance of what you need to be educated on. The most important thing is knowing that you have the condition, modifying those risk factors that are modifiable, and good follow-up with your optometrist or your ophthalmologist, depending on where you're located and how advanced your disease is. But the screening is what I would say. I tell every single person I do. In fact, I have 4 little children. I make them do this too. I tell everybody, regardless of age, every single day, it takes a second, cover each eye, and just look at something straight. The Amsler grid is what we often promote. It's what's used to document degree of distortion in clinic. But it can be stressful because, I forgot my Amsler grid's on my fridge. I forgot to look at it. The truth is you don't need the Amsler grid every single day. If there's one take-home point from this talk, every single day, every single one of you, regardless of age or anything else, cover each eye, completely cover it, cover the other eye, and look at something straight. And notice if it's blurry or if it's distorted. Of course, blurriness can happen because your eyes are dry, so you blink a few times, check again. If you notice that, it seems off. And the real thing that you're doing is you're comparing it to the day before and the day before that. So if you do it every day while you're normal, you will have a good sense of what your baseline is. You'll know that, oh, I have to blink a few times. Okay, yes, it looks straight, it looks straight. It literally takes a second, and it's no different than how we screen the rest of ourselves in our day. You know, we notice a bump, we look at it, we palpate it, or any other type of screening that you do, you self-screening, because no one wants to spend their whole day, every day, being screened at the doctor's offices. So that is my take-home message for you. Screen each eye. Now people think when I say each eye that, oh, it just means I'm looking through my right eye, but both eyes are open. No, it means cover and completely cover. If you're wearing glasses, you could do it with your glasses on. If you don't wear glasses, obviously not with your glasses on, but try to be consistent. You don't have to be bound by the Amsler grid, and so if you're traveling, you don't have to take your grid with you. You can do it with anything straight, but that is probably the most important thing for everyone to remember and for you to tell all your loved ones, because like that patient I spoke about at the beginning, if you notice distortion and it's caught early, we can really improve your vision with our current therapies if you're converting to wet, and in that scenario, time really is vision. So there's the micronutrients. I'm sure many of you have heard of these. Many of you may be taking them, ARIDS 2, this in addition to a healthy diet of green leafy vegetables and oily fish. There was a large study, 4,000, several hundreds of patients, and it was shown that you can reduce the you can reduce the risk of progression to intermediate and advanced stages of age-related macular degeneration by 20 to 25% by taking these vitamins. Now, some of you who are really informed with the literature might know there's some controversy if you have certain genes that I spoke about earlier and the vitamins, and do they conflict or can they cause harm? Right now, we go again based on the based on the NIH and the AO guidelines and the Canadian guidelines, and we do not genetically screen you and risk stratify you until you don't take vitamins. We tell all our patients to take vitamins, and that's the general consensus amongst the retinal specialists in the city. So you take your ARIDS if you meet certain criteria, and your ophthalmologist and optometrist can discuss that with you. Now, primary prevention. So a lot of patients will come in and they'll say, oh, you know, I've lost vision in one eye, I've got wet in the other, I'm getting monthly injections. Do my kids need to take the vitamins? There is no evidence for primary risk reduction. So if you have no changes in your eyes, you don't take the vitamins. That did not show to be of any benefit. So your kids or yourself or your loved ones have to be screened. You don't just say take the vitamins, because you know everything does have some risk associated with it, and whether they're known or not known. So you want to take them if you meet the criteria based on the ARIDS guidelines and studies. The next thing is lifestyle. We touched on this a little bit about smoking cessation and cardiovascular risk reduction, so hypertension, hypercholesterolemia, your diet changes, and lifestyle and activity. You want to be very active if you can, or however you can, be as active as you can. So obesity reduction. And then the last thing is low vision aids, and this is not something to take lightly in terms of the management of age-related macular degeneration. There are amazing aids out there, some of which you probably saw up at the front, but with the tablets, iPads and other tablets, and you can reverse the contrast, you can make things bigger or smaller. The low vision aids are amazing and can really improve someone's quality of life. If someone's an avid reader, there are many ways in which you can regain vision through these low vision aids. But the biggest thing and the most important thing is what often happens from our side, the treating side, is we send patients and they spend a considerable amount of money that's worth spending, in my opinion, but it's the education piece. So you can only get so much education from the person giving you the optometrist prescribing or giving you the low vision aids, but you need family support as well to help you to learn how to work these some of these tablets or other vision aids. Because once you know and once you're comfortable, the learning curve can be steep, and it can be a little intimidating if you're not savvy with electronics or various types of equipment. But once that hump is over, you can actually live a very high quality life in terms of doing the things you like to do with these vision aids. So that's not to be forgotten, and that's a very, very important thing to pursue. So the wet kind, like I said, it accounts for about 10% of age-related macular degeneration, and that's where we get these abnormal blood vessels that grow. And there's 3 types of vessels that grow, and they can grow in different layers beneath or within the retina, but they all have the same endpoint of lots of blood and exudate and macular edema that cause vision loss. And this is the one that we actually have very good treatment for. There was some studies, some of you may be familiar, of some injections for dry age-related macular degeneration, but they didn't pan out, unfortunately. So the wet kind, you can get what's called a pigment epithelial detachment, and that in itself, we don't treat. We only treat that if it's associated with blood or subretinal fluid. We never treat just PEDs on their own, but this is part of the spectrum of the wet. And then we get blood, and you can see here the picture on your left is an actual choroidal neovascular membrane, and then you can get hemorrhage as well. And again, a lot of the treatment is the same. Education, it happens in one eye. Like I said, it's a bilateral but asymmetric disease. So one eye can convert to wet and you can be getting treatment, and the other eye may still be dry. So you still need to screen both eyes. You may be seeing the ophthalmologist monthly, but 2 days after you got your injection in one eye, you could convert to wet in the other eye. And if your treated eye is doing quite well, you won't pick up a change in the other eye unless you screen. So educate in terms of knowing what to do, and screening are still vital to wet age-related macular degeneration if one eye has not converted to wet. The vitamins, again, if both eyes have end stage, or if one eye is wet and the second eye has vision loss, you don't need to take the vitamins. People, and even some of us, sometimes we forget to tell our patients, you can stop the vitamins. The vitamins are to reduce the risk of progression. But if you've already progressed, you don't need to take the vitamins. You still need to eat a healthy diet. It's good for many reasons on top of just the eyes, but you don't need to take the vitamins if you have bilateral involvement. The lifestyle changes, and again, the low vision aids. But the biggest thing, and this is actually why I chose, when I was an ophthalmology resident, to go into retina. I liked everything, and I contemplated doing a lot. But in my time as a resident, about a decade ago, anti-VEGF therapy became the treatment. So in my first year, we had something called PDT, photodynamic therapy, and really you wouldn't gain vision back. You might be able to stabilize, but a lot of people lost vision. And so, as a resident, it wasn't something that was very exciting because you couldn't really give your patients too much hope. But in the anti-VEGF era, vascular endothelial growth factor is VEGF, and these injections help mop up the fluid and help with the permeability of the vessels. So the reason we get this blood and leakage is because the vessels become very permeable. So there's a breakdown of the barrier, and you get leakage of fluid. You get fluid that goes into the underneath the retina and causes vision loss. So these agents actually help improve vision. So it was a very exciting time as a resident. There were talks being given all the time, visiting professors were coming, and now we could tell our patients, we would see someone with blood come in through the emerge, and it was very exciting to say, actually we have new treatment, and not only may this preserve your vision, but actually you might gain vision. And that was what the big excitement was, that we were actually getting vision back. And so some of you may know people, or some of you may be undergoing injections, and we don't just use these injections for age-related macular degeneration. We use it for diabetes and hypertension that causes troubles in the eye, vein occlusions, and those types of things. But the injections have really improved patient care, and I have at least one patient in the audience who can probably attest to that. But the problem is the burden of the treatment. You do have to, in the beginning, come in every single month to receive an injection. And then the literature of what to do, the research of what to do after those first 3 to 6 months. We definitely always do at least 3 injections as a loading dose every month. But then what to do afterwards is still a subject of debate. So there's different regimens. You can come in monthly forever, You can have what's called treat and extend. So you come in and you still have blood or you still have fluid, so we keep you on the monthly. Then you come in and the blood is gone, the fluid is gone, so we say, okay, instead of every 4 weeks, let's go to 6 weeks. We extend you to 6 weeks for a few sessions, so say 3 of 6 weeks or 2 of 6 weeks, and then we say, okay, now you're still dry, there's no blood, let's go to 2 months, and then let's go to 10 weeks, and then let's go to 12 weeks. So that's called treat and extend. And again, we treat retina specialists treat you as if you only have one eye. We don't say, oh, the vision's good in the other eye, let's take the risk and go to 3 months. We treat you as if that's your only eye, instead of thinking, oh, you have a backup, because one day you may not have that backup if we let go of one eye. So and then there's PRN, where we don't treat you, but we bring you in maybe every 3 months just to make sure you're not progressing and not able to detect it, because sometimes you can have some subclinical changes that we may treat. We might see blood that you don't notice, and blood and fluid are always a sign of disease activity. So these injections we put through the white of the eye, it sounds horrendous. Oh my God, a needle through my eye. But most patients will tell you that it sounds a lot worse than it is. Patients will come monthly because they know that they see and they have they can feel the consequences of the injection. So they will come. These are not patients we have to hunt down and say, like diabetic patients, sometimes we have to call and bring them back because we know that they can lose their vision and they may not be compliant. AMD patients generally come religiously every month because they know it helps them see and keep their visual function so that they can do the things that they like to do in their life. So there are other agents coming in the pipeline. Hopefully soon we'll have agents that last longer, so you won't have to do, we thought one of them was going to last longer, but in real world data it seems that everyone averages, even though we say monthly, the average number of injections is almost never 12. It's usually less than 12, just because of long weekends and vacations and things like that. But this is the gold standard for treatment now, and it really has revolutionized the treatment of age-related macular degeneration. It's a very exciting field to be in because of that and because of what's coming down after these agents and expansion of these agents. And that's it. I hope that was informative. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Dr. Coley, for that wonderful presentation. As many of you are aware, vision care in Canada entails a complex web of services and treatments and programs. So understanding your disease, understanding its pathology, and having a clear sense of certain preventative measures is so important. So thank you, Dr. Coley, for those insights and for being a part of today. We do have to move things along, so I am going to ask that we hold Q&A until after our next speaker has presented. But before I introduce him, I would like to offer a very special thanks to Specialty Pharma Solutions, who is a local sponsor of Vision Quest. And I am providing a special thanks because they've actually sent 4 representatives who are here at our speakers table. So thank you so much for making Vision Quest possible. It's really incredible, and thank you for being here today. Yes, absolutely. And also, I had mentioned our wonderful volunteers at the outset, but what I didn't mention is that every single one of them wearing a green shirt is actually from a construction company called Multiplex Construction. So as a group, they've come forward and offered to be a part of today. And if you had any interaction with them, you know that they're incredible. So thank you so much for being a part of this. So it is with great pleasure that I get to introduce our next speaker, who is Dr. Andras Nagy, who is the senior investigator at Mount Sinai's Lunenfeld-Tannenbaum Research Institute. There's a mouthful for you. As evidenced by the title of his talk, Developing a Cure for Age-Related Macular Degeneration, Combining Gene Therapy and Stem Cell Therapy, Dr. Nagy's work is situated at the intersection of 2 of the most promising approaches in vision science, gene therapy and stem cells. He's been studying the intricacies of stem cells for 30 years and is world-renowned for discovering a method to create stem cells from other cells in the human body, an enormous breakthrough in regenerative medicine. Most recently, he became the inaugural recipient of the Cedric Ritchie Fund to Cure Blindness, a $1.5 million initiative spearheaded by the Foundation Fighting Blindness. So I'll invite you to the podium, Dr. Nagy.
Thank you very much for the foundation to giving this opportunity to me to talk to you about our research. And I apologize also from those who were in my lab about a month ago where we gave a lab tour, because I was asked to give the same talk to this broader audience. But I tried to be as entertaining as I was at that time. So what you might want to know about my lab is that I came to Canada 30 years ago as a visiting scientist from Hungary, and originally I was planning to be here for 2 years at the Mount Sinai Hospital Research Institute. And I liked this country, I liked the institutes, I liked Toronto, Canada. So the original plan was for 2 years, then extended for 1 more year, and then I bought a piano to my daughter. And so that was where I started thinking, what did it mean that you buy a piano when this was a real big piece, when you are here only for a short period of time. And this is when I realized that, you know what, I want to just stay here as the piano is staying in my home. So, and then this is how I started my lab, my own lab back in 1994, so it's quite a while ago. And we started with stem cells. At that time, we only have stem cells from the mouse, but we were very excited about it. And we did lots of work about with the stem cells, which we were capable of changing any kind of cells of the body, and obviously envisioned that this might be in the future is going to lead to 3 diseases which are associated with cell loss, tissue damage. We call it degenerative diseases. And so that's how I just started growing my lab. And then what you see on this picture is my current lab in Toronto. Lots of talented people, all excited about stem cells, all excited about how we can use these stem cells to treat disease. And it happened also very recently that a basic biology lab where I tried to understand stem cells, really basic questions, went through a big change, a major transformation, when after 20 years of studying stem cells, absolutely academic questions, we just found that, you know what, it's time to stop and try to see whether what we always say that they hold promise, Okay, now show the promise, and then go translational and try actually to address those questions which are really needed to introduce the stem cells into medicine and treat human beings. So it was a very exciting transition 4 or 5 years ago in my lab, and also wanted to further extend my lab. So I show you a very small lab, which is also mine. That's one. And this is in Melbourne, Australia, other side of the globe. And the 2 labs work amazingly together in many diseases, what we are targeting now with stem cells. And maybe the next slide. So this is what I talked about, that now we have this stem cell laboratory for over 2 decades, and we have a massive interest in translational research now from a basic biology lab. And we have several diseases, not just blindness, but blindness was the first and probably the most advanced of these. So we are in these 2 labs targeting blindness, arthritis, diabetes, stroke, multiple sclerosis, and hemophilia. So, and then you see that many of them kind of link together. For example, blindness or diabetes is kind of linked together because the 2 are kind of associated, and blindness is one of the morbidities of diabetes. And we were, as I said, cell biology lab, but also played a lot with genes. And the basic strategy which applies to all of these diseases is the same. Practically, we try to combine gene therapy with cell therapy, and combining these two and kind of sure that if we combine these two, the gene therapy is going to synergize with the cell therapy, and then we could come up with a better treatment of these diseases when we do only gene therapy alone or cell therapy alone. So we were quite, as I said, excited about it, and we took blindness as a first target back in 10 years ago now, or a little bit more, 12 years ago, when we also started working with VEGF. In fact, we started working with VEGF in 1995, more than 20 years now. I think my lab was the first who removed VEGF from the mouse and then showed what's the role of the VEGF in vessel development and vessel integrity, and also the leakiness of the vessels that you heard from a previous speaker. And from this experiment with the VEGF, so that we started also developing anti-VEGF biologics or proteins, which could be even better than what is in the clinic at the moment, like Avastis or Lucentis. So we realized that VEGF, anti-VEGF, has side effects. So anti-VEGF therapy is not just fixing the vessels in your eye, but also when they leak out, they have systemic effect, and they could create ulcers and microstrokes and headaches and so on. So it is not a simple thing to use anti-VEGF therapies, not just for the blindness, but also it was quite exciting to use anti-VEGF for cancer treatments. The idea was to suppress vessel formation in the solid tumors and starve the tumor to death, right? So, but also it was obvious after a few clinical trials that anti-VEGF therapy also has a negative effect. It could have many, many systemic side effects if we suppress the signaling from this important factor for normal life as well. So we developed a so-called sticky VEGF trap. It's an anti-VEGF, which is local acting, not going out from the eye. It stays in the eye, not leaking out, not going to create a systemic side effect. And this was one of our things that we started thinking when we developed this new proteins that anti-VEGF, that what could be the best disease to use this for? And this is where we turned to the eye. So eye was very, very kind of obvious that this is going to be where we can try these new biologics that we developed to treat eye diseases. And on this slide, you see that we created this engineered, practically, a new proteins. It's not existing in our body, right? And we decided to combine and use cells to deliver this protein into the eye. Not a needle injecting into the eye, but the cells could be a factory of this important anti-VEGF factor, which could actually produce and manufacture this anti-VEGF into the eye after the cells are transplanted into the diseased eye. So here in this slide, I cannot really, impossible. I want to show you that how this strategy works, so that we have a new factor, anti-VEGF, which is called VEGF sticky trap. We put this gene, which produces this anti-VEGF, into a stem cell as a transgene, in a way that this transgene is expressing this anti-VEGF in an inducible manner. A small drug you add to the cells or the patients, the cells are going to produce and secrete the anti-VEGF into the environment. That was the idea, so we put this anti-VEGF gene into stem cells. Then, because they are stem cells, they can be changed into any kind of cells. And these transgenic cells, stem cells, we change them into eye resident cell. The easiest to produce eye resident cells is to change them into retinal pigmented epithelium. So it's an easy, a few months, but we can change these stem cells into RPEs. And now these RPEs, coming from a transgenic stem cells, are capable of manufacturing this anti-VEGF protein. So next step is put these RPEs into the eye. Not easy, but it's possible to do. Even possible to do if the mouse eye, which is not bigger than a black pepper size. And it's possible to inject these cells into the subretinal region between the RPE and the retinal layer. They home there, they stay there for long, and if we add the drug, which is inducing the anti-VEGF by these cells, this anti-VEGF is expressed, and now when they are injected, now they are produced by these cells, and then could have a same effect than the monthly injection. And as long as the cell is in the eye, you can only have to give a piece of pill to the patient for a day or two, and these cells are going to produce the anti-VEGF equivalent amount what you want to inject if it is a Lucentis or Avastin or something anti-VEGF. So that was the idea of we can avoid the monthly injection of a protein by putting cells into the eye, which is going to be the factory. And so practically this was the basic idea, so that we were quite happy that, for example, our sticky VEGF trap is even better than Lucentis or the VEGF trap, which is used by the clinic. They can stay longer in the eye, and they're not leaking out and not getting into the circulation and not creating a systemic side effect. So practically this was our first approach, to go to the eye. And then after that, we started thinking, okay, that's great, but what are really the quick questions here, what we have to solve in order to get cells into a human body, right? Because cell therapy at that time, 12 years ago, it was just a dream except bone marrow transplantation. Because everybody was afraid about that these cells could create harm. We produce these cells outside of the body in the laboratory, right? Producing cells and growing up cells into millions of cells. It's a risky business because in every cell division, the cells can mutate and can pick up mutations where the mutation could cause cancer. So one of the biggest fear with cell therapy many, many years ago, not many, let's say 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, or even now, that what if these cells are going to create harm because of this mutation, which is now could happen during the laboratory growth of these cells. So we identified, because now starting to be translational, that we have to get a solution for cell therapy safety. We have to actually further modify these cells, these stem cells, which exclude the possibility that these cells could create cancer or tumors in the eye. So we did that, so that I don't want to go into the details because it's a long story, but now we have a way of ensuring that what the cells what we are using to put into a human being, into the eye or into other places, will never going to form tumors. And this was absolutely essential. So obviously we want to get this whole technology to entering to the clinic and translation to the clinic, and it's important to protect it so that we put a patent on it. But most importantly, two things is important. We also kind of created a spin-off company from the lab, which took this technology and trying to go and pave the way from the bedside, or from the bench to the bedside, and to get this technology to the clinic. But also, just to show you that how important it was for the cell therapy, I can proudly announce that this paper is coming out Thursday, this week, on the 15th of November in Nature, which describes this technology, the first solution that we can actually solve the problem of the safety issue of cell therapies, and also quantify the risk, what you can take, because there's no absolute safety in life. When you walk on the street or drive a car or fly in an airplane, you always take a risk, right? But the risk, you know, that is low. And this is what is important also, everything what we do in life, we have to have some idea what the risk, what we are taking. And it's true also for medicine, true also for cell therapy. And this is a first work practically, which is able to quantify the risk what a cell therapy patient is taking when you're getting, let's say, millions of cells into your body grown in the laboratory. So I think I stop here because now I can talk about this for 2 hours. But I just want to continue with this quote from this guy, Henry Jackson Van Dyke. He was a Princeton professor back in the early 20th century. And he has a quote from him. I found a quote from him that man is the only creature that dares to light a fire and live with it. The reason, because he alone has learned to put it out. And this is what we think about learning how to make the cells safe. Now we can really do something with the cells additional, which might be intrinsically unsafe, because we know how to put the fire out if it happens, right? So now this is where actually now identify the second hurdle on cell therapies, and which is if you take cells from somebody else, your body is going to recognize it as a foreign cell and is going to reject it. So how can we hide the cell from the immune system, which then the immune system is not able to recognize it and not able to reject? And in this case, if we solve this problem, we can come up with off-the-shelf cell products ready to use to every human being or all humankind. So that was the second challenge that we addressed in the lab, and we, again, we had a solution for that, so that we also protected it and got exclusive license to the spin-off company that we generated, which is a solution for foreign cell tolerance. The cell, our body is not rejecting it, not seeing it. Like, we also use the word cloaking, like from Harry Potter or from the Klingons Empire, from the Star Trek, right? Where they had the spaceship called the bird of prey, where they could press a button and then the spaceship disappeared, the eye of the enemy, right? So this is what we are doing practically with our cells, cloaking it, a cloaking device, putting a cloaking device into it. So we started learning immunology. Is a very, very complicated what our immune system is doing, especially how the immune system is recognizing the foreign cells in our body and what enemy they create against these cells to remove it. It's a very important function. Without such a system, we could be much higher level of cancer prevalence. Our immune system, by recognizing the weirdos, those are not our cells. It's very important also to remove potential cancerous cells on a daily basis from our body, right? So that's why we thought that we had to solve the problem of the safety before we start playing with the fire and with trying to actually hide cells from the immune system, because this is exactly what the cancer cells are doing. They are escaping from the immune system by cloaking themselves. So, cut the long story short, so that we started learning the immune system and then recognized 8 transgenes, which we hypothesized that if we express at the cell surface of the cell, the surface of the cell, it's going to create the same what the bird of prey spaceship actually did, cloaking. So, and it worked. So this is a proof of principle, what I want to show you on this slide. Just to visualize our cells that we are putting into the body, we borrowed a gene from the firefly, which has this beautiful mechanism which could actually light up a little candle in the dark, and it's beautiful in the night. So this is a gene which creates a protein which is capable of emitting light. So we put this gene, the firefly gene, into mouse cells, mouse stem cells, so which also emit the light. And we put this lantern-containing cells under the skin of the mouse. Stem cells goes under the skin. And what you see in the red dots is that when these cells are put under the skin, with highly sensitive cameras, you are able to see the light emitted from these cells placed under the skin, through the skin, and even through the coat. And you see that these cells are there because they are emitting this light. So we took black stem cells, and we put these black stem cells into black mice. It's not foreign, there's the same cell. And obviously, these cells stay there because they are not foreign, they are not rejected, and they are perfectly accepted. So that's after several weeks. Now we put these cloaked black cells into white mice. And this is what happened. Instead of being rejected, these cloaked black cells are also not recognized and not rejected in the white mice. So pretty much showing that these cells are not accepted, tolerated, and just staying there and not removed by the immune system of the white mice. So this was really needed, in fact, now to show that now the two together, the fail-safe or the safe system plus this cloaking system, is now give us the position to create one single stem cell line which could serve all humankind with stem cell-derived therapeutic cells off the shelf available and further modified maybe to be a factory of biologics, for example, anti-VEGF proteins. So, and then we do believe that blindness is going to be one of the first diseases where this cell line, the single cell line, serving all humankind, is going to help and going to treat or cure blindness. So my last slide is Barbara and me. I really appreciate Barbara's contribution and also the award that we got from her and then made our research possible, and hoping that her generosity also could help us to lead this technology that developed into lab into the bedside. Thank you very much. So just one more thing, that we are kind of behind, but I have a 5-minute video which was made by a student in my lab about age-related macular degeneration and combining gene and cell therapy. If you want to see, and you have 5 minutes more, I wouldn't mind to just play it without any talking, just watching and seeing what's happening in the lab. Practically, it tells in a very, very nice animated way that how we are planning to use this technology to treat the wet form of AMD.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I mean, we are running a little bit behind. This event is scheduled to go until 1:30, but there's no reason that we can't stick around a little bit longer. A show of hands for individuals who'd be interested in seeing the video, and then we'll move on to Q&A after that. Okay, wonderful.
Okay.
Roll the tape.
The sun will come, I think, after the... Hopefully.
As light enters the eye, it is received by photoreceptors for visual processing
Thank you.
That's a great video, and thank you so much for your presentation as well, Dr. Nagy. I thought it was wonderful that the presentation ended with a slide of Dr. Nagy standing beside Barbara Ritchie. I had mentioned the Cedric Ritchie Fund to Cure Blindness. It's a very generous contribution that's going to enable Dr. Nagy to take his work to the next level. It's also a reminder that science does not advance in a bubble. It's not just researchers in a lab. It's an enormous undertaking that takes not just scientists, but also healthcare practitioners and policymakers and government and industry, and perhaps most importantly, patients. So that's a big part of why we're here today, is to actually engage in conversation and to understand what needs to be done to enable this kind of research to move forward so that we can see new treatments come to Canada. So thank you so much, Dr. Nagy. So we have time for a Q&A session now, which is wonderful. And if I could ask one of our volunteers to bring up a couple of chairs, or two volunteers to bring up a couple of chairs, I would appreciate that, just so that our speakers have somewhere to sit. Sorry to spring that on you, but it just occurred to me. Just up here would be fantastic, close to the sign there. Thank you. And so the way that this will work is that I'll invite the speakers back up to the stage. And we're going to have a mic runner, my colleague Jamie Alexanderson. She's holding the mic up in the air, right there. And just put your hand up, and I'll be the person who points you out. And then Jamie will come and provide you with the mic. So the woman here in the purple shirt, yep.
Could you please tell me the 3 best fishes you would suggest?
Tuna, salmon, mackerel. You know, I'm a vegetarian. I've never had fish in my life. I have to just tell you.
Can you speak a little louder? Sorry.
Tuna, salmon, and mackerel are the ones that we typically say to have. And tuna.
Can you repeat the question?
The question is, as you get older, things appear dimmer. And so is there anything that you can do for that? And absolutely, you want to increase the light in your room, in your home, so the brighter, the better. And then you want to do some, what's that? I mean, if you have cataracts, sometimes you want to get your cataracts removed. And then you can play with fonts, and you can have, we typically have black on white, but you can do, light on dark instead. So you can manipulate contrast now, and it's a bit easier with these iPads and other tablets. So those are the main things.
Great, yeah. Okay, nice and loud.
Thank you. With regard to that universal stem cell, is it specific, or is it just to one species?
So is it specific or what?
Can it be put into a pig, a dog, a cat, or something else, that universal stem cell you developed? Or is it just specific to humans?
You know, it's such a weird thing, that whole interference with the speakers.
Maybe I'm too loud.
Yeah. Oh, I see sort of what you mean. So that, I mean, the two things, that's a great question. So that practically we have human cells to human, so that we are not thinking about using animal cells into human. But also there's a huge area besides, obviously, human
Dr.
medicine.
Nagy, sorry, can you just speak closer? Okay.
Okay.
There.
Huge area, the veterinary medicine, where blindness could be also an issue in our, horses, for example, pretty expensive, or pets, right? Where I can see also that this cell therapy could actually enter, maybe even faster than to human, because likely the regulations there is going to be not as kind of strict than the human applications. But we try to use practically the same species cell line to treat that particular species. But obviously, our primary species is the human.
I was wondering, doctors, like that? Can you hear me? I'm just wondering, what is the best eye drop to put in for dry eyes? There's so many out there. I've tried several.
So I
But-
can tell you what we generally don't like to use Visine because that can create a dependence and you can get increasing red eyes. But all the other eye drops tend to be relatively equivalent if you're getting the bottles. But if you have very, very sensitive eyes, then you want to get the preservative-free minims. And those are, you open them and you have to use them within the same day. So those are preservative-free dry artificial tears are probably the best. But dry eyes, you know, there's a whole approach. The drops are just one of many. You want to take omega-3 fatty acids. You want to do hot compresses to open up your meibomian glands, which secrete oil and help the aqueous layer not to dissolve or evaporate. So there's many, and you want to do some lid scrubs. So depending on the etiology of your dry eye, the artificial tears is just one piece of the treatment. But if you have very severe dry eye and you find that all the drops are irritating you, then you want to use the preservative-free one of any brand.
There was a study a few years ago out of the U of BC that the oral use of biophosphonates for osteoporosis doubled the risk of developing wet age-related macular degeneration. Is this still considered to be the case?
What was the name of the medication?
The medications that one takes for osteoporosis, oral biophosphonates.
There are no osteoporotic medications that I'm familiar with that are in clinical use that result in the progression of wet age-related or neovascular AMD. So I don't know if those are being actively used now for osteoporosis.
Okay, so we had a question over here, and then I know we have a lady over here in the black shirt who we're going to get to next.
Okay. I wanted to ask you about scarring of the macula. Is there anything that could be done for that?
Scarring of the macula.
Unfortunately, we have no way of removing scars pretty much anywhere on the body yet, in or on the body. So scarring, there is no treatment for scarring. Once you have a scar, it's in your macula. It's there forever, unfortunately. But I think that there is hope. There is a lot of work again in the pipelines on looking at anti-fibrotic agents that we one day may be able to inject into the eye or deliver in other ways, which may help reduce scar formation. But we're nowhere close to being anywhere near that at this point. So the short answer is no.
Dr. Nagy, for your promising results of the stem cells, what is the timeline before it goes through Health Canada to be marketed and for helping people like us who are here?
I mean, that's really one of the most important question of use, so that when it is coming to the clinic, right? And I have to tell you that for the eye, it is quite promising. So because the clinical trials are already started with stem cell made retinal pigmented epithelium sheet that they are placing into the eye and try to block or stop the progression of blindness. Yeah, I think it is going to be expanded quite rapidly because the eye is one of the, I can say that the best target as far as the cell therapies are concerned, because it is very accessible with imaging, so we can look into it, we can look much better into it than any other organs of our body. And this is an important thing because we want to see what's happening with those cells, what we are putting into the disease site. And that's why I think that the blindness and the eye diseases is going to be in the front line of the cell therapies just because of this unique features of the eye.
Okay, and also for either one of you, on a daily basis, besides taking lutein, zeaxanthin, things like that, Is there anything else one can do for helping this macular atrophy and RP irregularity? Anything else, or is it just ongoing without any other recourse?
Other than those lifestyle modifications, of the list of risk factors, the ones that were actually modifiable, there isn't much else that can be done at this time. But there is a lot of hope. There's a lot of research, a lot of what you heard just now, and for the dry piece also, there's a lot of research. So hopefully, within the next few years, we'll have treatment for the dry type as well.
And lastly, for those of us who are married to our smartphones and tablets and laptops, come nighttime, is the white light or blue light detrimental to?
Blue light is damaging, yes.
Okay. Yes, my experience has been every time that I have to change my eyeglasses, because I only need it for reading, there is no regulation apparently with all the entities that are selling glasses. So I only wanted to repair one side, and nobody in no store will do that. They said, you have to get new glasses, basically. Not one time, but over the years I have used them. I said, number one. Number two, I learned that by not changing my glasses now, I can see better. By using the glasses they give me, my eyesight goes worse. So somebody has to be accountable. Do you know who is the regulatory body for all the stores that sell prescription glasses? Because if the client wants something, they should give it to us. But they are very strong to sell whatever they have, and then that makes you sick. In my case, now I can see better now without glasses, the very fine print. So I don't think that my eyes are deteriorating.
I know nothing about glasses.
You're very honest, though, which is appreciated. Thank you for that question. I'll interject at this moment just to let you know that, so we couldn't answer that question, obviously, but the conversation will continue onwards. It's not like this has a hard beginning and a hard stop. You should feel free to reach out to the Foundation Fighting Blindness, and we can connect you to the appropriate person, or we can answer that question ourselves. And that goes for all of your questions.
And sorry, I was just joking when I said that, but glasses are outside my domain, definitely, but usually if you go back to the person who prescribed, most 99% of the time, they will take the time to. So in that case, I apologize that didn't happen, but the foundation, and as well, if you go maybe to another optometrist, they might be able to help you sort out your glasses. But the good news is, if you can see fine print, that's very promising that you have pretty healthy eyes.
Okay, so we probably have time for one or two more questions. Yeah.
I just was wondering if there was any relationship between cataract surgery and the onset of either dry or wet macular degeneration. Is there anything to say that they're connected?
No. There is no evidence to suggest that cataract surgery results in the progression of either dry or wet age-related macular degeneration. So there's no good studies documenting or demonstrating that. That being said, I have patients, I do cataract surgery and I treat age-related macular degeneration. Those are sort of the two things that I do. Occasionally you do see someone who comes back after surgery with some blood or a new membrane, but was that going to happen anyways or not? So I do counsel all my patients who are undergoing cataract surgery who have dry or wet age-related macular degeneration that they need to, again, screen themselves and be hypervigilant, because it's not beyond the stretch that they may convert. But is it the cataract surgery or not? We don't know. As well, if you're undergoing injections for age-related macular degeneration, all of us will pre-treat you with an injection prior to cataract surgery. Even if you're dry and you're on a treat and extend or a Q3 monthly protocol for injections, we will still inject you prior to surgery just to sort of cover you to ensure that you don't progress. But the literature does not suggest that you're at increased risk for progression.
Okay, so we're going to take two more questions.
Could you comment on the laser treatment of cornea for dry macular degeneration that's offered at the Bachner Institute?
That is at its very, very early stages. The data that have come up right now are not according to any proper guidelines for, basic research. So a randomized control trial has not been done. It's just been patients with advanced geographic atrophy or drusen have been getting this treatment just as a first survey. So there's no good science behind it yet. That's all I can tell you. Is it promising? Perhaps, but currently we don't know enough, and we don't have enough hard sort of level 1 evidence for that treatment.
I was looking at what you had here on over-the-counter drugs, and I noticed that there was with zinc 80 milligrams, and I've heard that zinc can cause problems.
So there's a zinc-related anemia that can happen if you take too much zinc, and that's why there's copper in the AREDS formulation to prevent a zinc-associated anemia. But according to the AREDS 2 study, which was a very large population study, there were no other sequelae or complications from taking the zinc if the copper was included, which is included in all the formulations.
So a big, big thank you to Dr. Coley and Dr. Nagy for generously giving us their time and their expertise today. So that was wonderful. And as I said before, the conversation doesn't have to end there. Feel free to stay in touch. Feel free to engage in conversations with one another and with us after we part ways. I thought that the talks were fantastic, and part of the reason they were fantastic is because there was synergy between them. So Dr. Coley had mentioned that there's a real burden associated with the standard of care for wet AMD right now, anti-VEGF treatments, and it's really incredible that Dr. Nagy and his team are pushing forward research and work that could actually turn stem cells into essentially minuscule or microscopic factories that can produce that amazing and effective protein. So thanks so much to both of you for the incredible work you do and for being a part of today and the community in general. Thank you. Thanks. So now I'm just going to invite my colleague up to the stage to say a few closing comments. She's my favorite colleague. Nothing taken away from the rest of you. It's Ann Morrison. She's our Director of Philanthropy, and she's going to close things out.
Thanks very much, Chad. To my other colleagues that are here, don't believe him. I've heard him say it to everybody in our office. So one more time, I just want to thank Dr. Coley and Dr. Nagy because they volunteered their time today to teach us about the wonderful research that is and the care that is going to only get better and better with time. So we have to have hope and faith that these things, I know we're all very impatient and we want them to happen yesterday or at least tomorrow, but we know what's going to happen thanks to research. So please, one more time, a big round of applause for Dr. Nagy and Dr. Coley. They truly inspire us to work harder because of the kind of what they are doing is the kind of research that we work hard every single day to raise money for. They are helping us bring innovative sight-saving and sight-restoring treatments to Canada, and that's at the very core of what the Foundation Fighting Blindness does. And that's why we are here today, and that's why we fundraise. Research is expensive. It's a long-term investment, but it's worth it because it is life-changing, as you all know. And I think I'm repeating what Chad said about the foundation for the past 44 years has invested more than $33 million to support vision research at hospitals and universities across Canada. And we've also forged partnerships to put another $10 million from government funding opportunities. So there are 3 things that you can do today to help change the future of vision research, and I've got to get them in before my friends leave. First, please fill out the survey that was included with your program. Your feedback really matters to us. We listen to it, and that's why we keep coming back to this wonderful venue that we find is everybody really, really likes. So please tell us what you want in your survey. Second, you can help by raising awareness of the Foundation Fighting Blindness by telling your friends and family, and even if your ophthalmologist is not familiar with us, let them know that the Foundation Fighting Blindness should be a go-to resource for all people diagnosed with macular degeneration. And third, you can make a donation to support sight-saving research. All the work we do is made possible by the incredible generosity of our donors. People are always surprised that we don't receive any government funding, but it's the truth. We are powered by people like yourselves who want a future without blindness. Thanks to our donors, many of you who are here today, we are closer than ever to new treatments and cures for age-related macular degeneration, glaucoma, diabetic retinopathy, and other forms of vision loss. So I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that we're really hoping that some of you might consider becoming monthly donors. There's some of you here today, and we've recognized you with a pin, and we thank you very, very much. But being a monthly donor for as little as $10 a month can help provide sustainable funding for vision research. And it also means you may not get as many letters asking you for donations all year long. So if that's encouraging for you, but please visit my colleagues in the exhibition area, and they can tell you more about monthly giving. But the most important thing is that you're here today, you're learning about the Foundation Fighting Blindness, you're learning more about your eye disease, and that is what will empower all of you, and it certainly empowers us that we're filling a need and helping all of you here today. So thanks very much for coming. We hope we'll see you again.
Check, check.